China has suspended indefinitely high-level economic talks with Australia. Beijing says the decision affects all activities under the China-Australia Strategic Economic Dialogue. China says the suspension is due to Australia's measures that have disrupted exchanges between the two countries. Beijing and Canberra have only had 3 rounds of talks under the dialogue since it started in 2014. The move reflects China's growing frustration with Australia, including Canberra's call for an inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus. Australia has also revoked agreements signed under China's Belt and Road Initiative. Just this week, Canberra said it was reviewing the management lease for the Port of Darwin given to a Chinese firm. For more, we're joined by Professor Peter Macaulay from the Australia National University. Prof, do you see trade relations deteriorating further?
It's difficult to say. Relations are already at quite a low ebb. It's not clear if they can go lower, at least from the Australian point of view. I guess that China still has a few arrows, if you like, or a few options to turn the screws on Australia. One might be to tighten further suggestions that Chinese students study in Australia. But apart from that, the options to turn the screws on Australia are probably now limited.
How will, this growing tension impact Australia's efforts to recover from the pandemic?
Yes, that's true. It's a curious situation, frankly. Australia has always emphasised openness to the global economy. And yet what we've seen in the last 12 months or so is a sort of closing. And it's an important closing because to close to China is an important closing for the Australian economy. But it seems that the Australian government is emphasising what it says are security goals, and in that sense is sacrificing goals of openness of the Australian economy. This is now, of course, causing something of a debate in Australia. If you like, people who take an economic point of view are concerned about a closure or a cutting off of trade, but people who emphasise security are saying that it is a price that is worth paying.
Professor, China imports most of its raw material for steel and aluminium from Australia. So could this backfire on Beijing?
Yes, I guess. But of course, Beijing is presumably weighing this option very carefully. And Beijing, China, really has other options, although the other options are not easy to turn to in the short term. So in that sense, Australia remains in a strong position. And those in Australia who are arguing that a clampdown, a closure of trade with China doesn't matter from the Australian point of view, say that China doesn't have a lot of options in this area of energy and iron ore and so on. So now it's hard to judge. It's hard to judge really exactly what the situation is. Presumably Beijing has weighed this up, and presumably Beijing has options. So you're really getting a sort of standoff, a chess game between the two countries. Australia is twisting the tail of the dragon, if you like, and China is presumably weighing up its options. It's a difficult situation, there's no doubt about it.
And perhaps zooming out a little, how will Australia-China tensions affect global trade?
That's difficult to say. I guess there are signals, of course, from a debate of this kind, both I suppose, to America, but perhaps more importantly to Europe. On one hand, you've got a relatively small country, perhaps Australia at best, a middle-level player, is taking on China, is challenging China. Now, other countries must be watching this. Europe Europe must be watching this. China, in turn, is in effect sending a message, even teaching a lesson to Australia, depending on how you measure it. And other countries will be watching this. My own guess is that Europe will be learning the lesson that it's not too sensible to pull a fight with China. But different countries will, of course, weigh up their options. America, of course, is an entirely different question. America is clearly a global power with immense power, and America will really take its own decisions, probably not taking much notice of what's going on in the debate between Australia and China.